Hey, Uncle Ugot's here. Today is Monday night, 7 o'clock. You know what that means? That's right, Health Chat is coming to you. Grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Nick Circolone here. Oh my gosh, it's another Monday. I'm so excited. You know how it is. I get so excited. I get all pumped up just to be here Monday night live with you, just hanging out, relaxing, taking it easy. And I've got a great show for you today. I think I do. We're going to be talking about personal injury. Wow, personal injury. What the heck is personal injury? Well, somebody had asked a question about personal injury, auto accidents, slip and falls, things like that. Every time I would hear personal injury, I would think about, oh my gosh, an ambulance chaser. He's one of those guys that's going to be just like, I heard you were in an accident and we're here to help you. Well, that's not how we operate. For those of you who don't know how personal injury is, if you're in an accident, you possibly get a lawyer, you fight with the insurance companies to get what expenses paid for that were accrued because of this accident. As I said, sometimes you'll have an attorney, sometimes you won't. But not every PI case needs an attorney. But there's always that but. And I'm going to explain a couple little things. And, as we try to do, we try to unpack some stuff and give you ideas on how you would go about trying to resolve some of these things. Well, one of the things about personal injury that is extremely annoying is, what do you do when you get hurt? Where do you go? Do you go to the emergency room? Do you go to your family doctor? Do you just stay at home and just tough it out? Well, a lot of times what happens is people that are in like minor fender benders, they don't need to go to the hospital, so they don't go to the hospital, and 2 or 3 days later, they're in tons of pain, and they don't know why. So we're going to talk about some of that today. When to get an attorney, when not to get an attorney. If you really feel like, I don't know if I'm really going to really pursue this. Everything about accidents and personal injury are very specific to you as an individual, depending on how you want to go about taking care of it. And I'm going to be talking about today ways that you can get that taken care of and kind of free your mind up a little bit about what to do. Okay, first thing, let's make a story. You're driving in your car, you're just sitting around, and all of a sudden, this guy jumps out in front of you and bam, you T-boned him. You get out of the car, airbags deployed, you start to exchange an insurance, you feel pretty good, you're walking around the car going, oh my gosh, my car is like a wreck. Police officer comes, they take your statements, they say, do you want to go to the hospital? How do you feel? Well, I feel fine. I just look at my car. We're okay. He's okay. I'm okay. They're okay. So we're all right. Just call a tow truck, get this car, and let's find out what goes on now. Then it all starts. Now you have no car. You're not hurt, according to you at that moment. The other people in the other car don't seem to be hurt. 2 or 3 days later, you're like, oh, my neck is bothering me. My back is bothering me. What did I do? And then you realize, hey, I was in an accident 3 days ago. Nah, that accident can't cause this. Yes, it can. Delayed pain happens more times than not when it comes to personal injuries, whether you slip and fall or you're in an automobile accident. Usually when you're in an automobile accident, it seems like it takes forever for that pain to come. Sometimes it comes right away. You go home and you're like, oh, I feel pretty good. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I don't feel good. I really don't feel good. And you feel aches and pains. Sometimes some people feel feverish. And you're like, what do I do? And who do I go to? So you'll call your family doctor the next day and go, hey, I've been in an accident. I'm hurting. What should I do? So you go in, they look at you and they say, oh, you have a sprained strain. You got some whiplash in your neck or in your low back. Go home, take some of this medication, and you'll feel better. So you go home, you'll get muscle relaxers, you'll sometimes get an anti-inflammatory, and sometimes you'll get some pain medicine. You'll start taking that stuff and you'll go, man, I just feel, I don't know, worse taking all of this than I did when I was hurting. Well, it happens. That's the way these injuries occur. And in a couple of weeks, you go, oh, I feel pretty good. Then later on down the line, maybe a month or so, a little bit longer, you're like, I really hurt. I'm still hurting in the same places I did following that accident. This is ridiculous. So you go back to your family doctor and you're like, oh, well, you have this, 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 and this. Let's give you some more medication for it. And this kind of snowballs. Unfortunately, what happens is I see these patients long after an accident has been settled, and we could have really taken care of this problem a lot sooner than waiting a year or 2 years or after this settles. So what do you do? All right. Okay, you're in an accident. You don't feel like you need to go to the hospital, so you don't go to the hospital. Call your family doctor. Get in to see them. If they don't do any x-rays, call someone like me. We'll get you in. We'll look at you. We'll order x-rays. We order specific x-rays. Most of what we do is for motion. I think we talked about that before. So what we do is we get motion x-rays. We find out, like, how is that neck moving? How is that back moving? And what we do at that point is kind of assess it. I do a full examination, orthopedic, neurological, and we find out what's going on. And 9 times out of 10, it really is one of these things where we can get this to resolve pretty quickly. With less medication, we'll do some exercising, manipulative therapy, physical therapy to get you back on the road to where you need to be. If you don't do this, that's when this stuff settles in and becomes a chronic problem. If it becomes a chronic problem, then we're dealing with a whole nother ball of wax. So my advice is, if you've been in an accident, whether it be a car accident or a slip and fall, get treatment right away. Don't wait until it's too late and it's all settled out and now it's going to be coming out of your pocket and not the people that are responsible for the accident. Now, I was going to tell you, when do you get an attorney, when you don't get an attorney? Here's my pat answer to that. If you're in an accident and you want to deal with this yourself, deal with it yourself. There may be a point where it gets extremely frustrating, gets extremely aggravating, and starts taking up too much of your time just dealing with the bureaucracy of this whole thing. Then you get on the phone, you can call an attorney, and they'll deal with everything. They'll take care of your insurance, they'll take care of the other person's insurance, and they'll call you when they need some information. Sometimes they'll send you to us. Sometimes they'll send you to another doctor. Doesn't matter. And they'll correspond with the doctors. They'll correspond with your imaging centers. If you've had any x-rays taken, they'll correspond with the hospital. And basically what you're paying them to do is to manage your case. And I don't have a problem with the attorneys managing a case, because if they're managing your case, that means all you have to do is settle in and get better, get well, so that way you can live your life the way you want to live it. So that's my take on should I get an attorney or should I not? If you want to do it yourself, go ahead. If it comes to a point where it becomes overwhelming, then you get an attorney. You can always get an attorney if you want, at that moment or later on. So let's look at like what kind of happens. Let's go through that scenario again. Let's just go with a slip and fall this time. You're walking down the street and you park your car in a supermarket, and all of a sudden you get out of your car, there's a little bit of oil there, whoop, slip, fall. What do you do then? Well, first thing is get it taken care of. Find out how much pain and damage you're going to have following that slip and fall. Again, it's about getting yourself taken care of right away. The longer you wait, the worse it gets, the harder it is to fix. That's kind of the simple, pat answer for all of that. I know I'm kind of going around in circles with all of this because, believe me, this is more convoluted than it seems. It's not a cut and dry situation. Everybody's different. I've seen small accidents that had a lot of problems, and I've seen big accidents that didn't have many problems. So it's not because how hard you were hit, how hard you fell, where you were hit. It doesn't matter. I've seen cars, you look at them and say, oh my gosh, how did they get out of that alive? And it wasn't a scratch on them. Then I've seen other injuries where they were basically rear-ended by another car going maybe 20, 25 miles an hour, and they got all kinds of issues that they have to deal with. And some of them become permanent. Now, that's another case in itself. You can get treatment for an injury. And I got to say this because I see this all the time. If you're in an accident, you've damaged structure of the body that may not respond and get back to where you were prior to the accident. We call that patients reaching maximum medical improvement. If 60% is maximum medical improvement from the injury, that's what it is. If it's 90%, if it's 95%, or if it's 100%, it's maximum medical improvement that you gained from that accident. So what that means is treatment at some point is going to stop because we cannot get that patient any better than they are right at that moment. And then if you have an attorney, that's when they fight that out and say, okay, this patient was fine prior to the accident. Now they're here and they're not at 100% where they were prior to the accident. So that's where the attorneys come in and can be very helpful in helping you take care of those situations. Another thing that you see is if you're like my age, 58 years old, you have some degenerative changes. It's just wear and tear on the body. It's there. But you don't have any problems. I don't have any problems. If I were to be in an automobile accident or a slip and fall and I hurt myself, I may irritate something that was already there. And people try to say, oh, you had a pre-existing condition. We're not going to cover this. Whoa, wait a minute. I had a pre-existing condition that I had no idea that I had. And now you're telling me that you're not going to cover these injuries because you're saying I had them before the accident. So the accident aggravated them and you're not going to pay for them? That's a bunch of malarkey, because what happens is everybody can have a pre-existing condition, or anybody can have a pre-existing condition. And what happens is it was aggravated by the accident. So yes, you can have a pre-existing condition that can be aggravated by an accident. And that's one of those things where I see that more often. I'll get depositions from attorneys. They'll come in, well, Ms. Smith had degenerative changes prior to this accident. Okay. You've seen Ms. Smith. I saw Ms. Smith 28 weeks ago. She had no problems. She was released from care. Or I saw this patient 5 years ago. And now I haven't seen her in 5 years. She hadn't had any treatment in 5 years, which means she was fine up until this accident. So that's where we kind of have to let the system deal with that. As your doctor or as a doctor, we don't have to figure out how that's going to play out. All the job that we have to do is make sure that you get better. And if you get better with this, then we've hit a home run. And my job, and any other physician's job, is to get you to where you were prior to the accident, or as close to that as we possibly can. Again, just think about maximum medical improvement. So let's talk about a couple things we just mentioned. All right. Should we get an attorney? Should we not get an attorney? Maximum medical improvement. How small injuries can have big problems and how large accidents can have little problems. So if you've been in an accident, if you've had a slip and fall, if you feel like you were not at fault for any of this, it's okay. Even if you were at fault. And we see patients all the time where they've been in an accident, they're driving down the road, wet and slippery, miscorrected, boom, hit a tree, went into a ditch, and they still have the same problems because it's an accident. Get that looked at. Don't let that linger, because if you let it linger, what happens is you can get an acute condition that will turn into a chronic condition. And that's what we want to avoid. So if there's no other person involved, it's not a legal issue that you get an attorney. It's something you can deal on your own. If there's another car involved and you don't want to deal with the hassles of the paperwork or the hassles of dealing with the insurance company, then you hire somebody to be your advocate, and that's where the attorneys come in play. Now, I'm not pushing people to get attorneys to sue. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is we're getting someone to help us facilitate and navigate through these uncharted waters. That's what they do. They do it all day long. If you look at the television, there's apparently a lot of people are in accidents because all you see are attorneys looking to settle with personal injury cases. I mean, it's all over the place. That's something that they do because that's their expertise. My expertise is helping you get better through physical medicine. Your other doctor may be helping you get better through using medications. What we do in my office, we have a medical clinic and we have a chiropractic clinic. So we have a full-blown musculoskeletal clinic. We have Dr. Solder who's with us. We have Reed Minton. Dr. Solder is our director, and Reed Minton is our nurse practitioner. And of course, myself. And as we grow, we get more people, and we're able to help those that have been injured or those who have had chronic conditions. Those who are dealing with arthritis that they've been everywhere. We like to look at our office as saying, okay, you've been everywhere. Now you've come to see us. Let's see what we can do. Does that mean that we're going to be able to fix everybody? No. Does that mean that if you've been in an accident, we're going to be able to be the only ones to help you? No, but we can actually be the advocates for you. If I think that you need to see an orthopedist, I'm going to send you to the orthopedist. If I think you need physical therapy, I'm going to send you need to have the doctor take and get some other medications that we don't deal with, like pain management, injections, things like that. We're going to send you for that. So we're not a one-stop shop, but we are one place where you can go and get a lot of things taken care of. I have to say, talking about this is really boring. It bores me to even talk about it because it's one of these things that just it cycles through, and it takes a while sometimes for somebody who's been in an accident or who has fallen, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a long process. Not all the time, but sometimes it is. But I got to tell you, to talk about it's kind of boring to me. And not because I don't think it's important, but it's one of those things where it's such a vast subject and such a large area to deal with, and it has so many moving parts that I can't address every single point. But my whole job today, or tonight rather, to talk about this was, hey, if you've been in an injury, or an accident rather, if you have an injury from an accident, get it looked at. Don't wait. If you're in pain, get it fixed. If it's acute, take care of it while it's acute. Do not let it become a chronic condition, because chronic conditions linger and linger and linger and linger, and sometimes there's no benefit for them. Sometimes you're going to have to deal with that. But if you can catch it right away, then you don't have to deal with those problems later on in life. So what if you're 20 years old and you feel great and you've been in a car accident? Get checked out. If you're 80 years old and you've been in a car accident, get checked out. If you have your children in a car, get them checked out. Because even when you're young and pliable and you've had sustained injuries, you can live with the pain at that moment, but it may turn into a chronic condition. I'm going to give you a story about myself. When I was 7 years old, if you've been listening to the show, you've heard me talk about this. When I was 7 years old, I was in a car accident. Actually, I was hit by a car. I was walking across the street, coming home from school. Car came out of nowhere, hit me doing about 50 miles an hour. Flipped me over the car. I landed on the concrete, on my head, had a deep press fracture in my skull, which means I just not only cracked my skull, but I literally dented it and broke my right leg. I was in the hospital for 2 months. At 50, and that was at 7 years old. I'm 58 now, and I still have some residuals from that. Some arthritis in my neck and into my shoulder because of that accident, and plus accumulative injuries over time following that. But that's when it all started. So just because you're young doesn't mean that you cannot develop chronic conditions later on in life. And that's the same way with any kind of injury. If you're playing sports, if you're in an auto accident, doesn't matter. All those injuries become cumulative and over time can develop into chronic conditions. Guys, I know that this is not the most energetic, oh, we're having so much fun show, but I really believe that you really needed to hear about that. So if you've been in an auto accident, give us a call. If you're not sure what to do, give us a call. If you need some advice on something, give us a call, put it in the chat, send us an email, get us on Facebook. Facebook is at Apple Physical Medicine Rehabilitation. You can email us at healthchat@gmail.com. You can get us onto Instagram, which is at applerehabgroup.com. And you can put in the chat on Facebook and on YouTube on our channel. Speaking of which, little housekeeping I was going to tell you about. I am working on a Facebook page and a YouTube page specifically for the radio show. So that way we just have one place to go rather than going through the office and things like that, which you can go through. It's at applerehabgroup.com to do that. So guys, it's been a quick show. It's been a great day. Hopefully you did well with the storms over the weekend. I feel terrible, and we've been praying for those down in Louisiana. But I just want to say you guys are awesome. We're going to be back next week. We're going to have a different show. I'm getting some doctors lined up, and we're going to be talking about different things. It's going to be just about anything we talked about. Into the show, we're going to be doing health of every sort, whether it be your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. All of that is going to be able to be taken care of right here. So give us your questions. Everybody have a great week, and God bless.